Spent countless hours in the garage with your dad. Now investing in that old car and working on it with your son reminds you of him. And his legacy lives on. Fund your passion with a low-interest home equity line of credit from Bank of Blue Valley.
You're so weird. You just get weird.
Oh, wait, you don't have kids' toys?
No,
you got big
anymore.
Kids.
I have big kids at this point. How are you?
Doing good. Did I have a child? Was my daughter born when this show started?
Yes. It was right around then.
So we've survived 2 hospital stints, and Aaron Fulk looks absolutely beautiful. And obviously you just shattered a little bone that Bank of Blue Valley and Burns and McDonnell knows all about. But give us an update on your health. How are you doing?
I don't know how you're going to segue into Pink, Blue Valley, and Birds and Mac. That was a good try, though. I was really impressed.
I got the colors on.
Yes. So I was walking down my stairs 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, yes, Sunday, and I fell down the stairs. It was night. I didn't turn on the lights. I did all the things you're not supposed to do, and all I knew is that my foot was going the wrong way, so I went like this. Turns out I broke both your main bones in your leg, your fibula and your tibia, so bad that they popped out of my skin. So, I like to project manage everything. So by the time I called Janae, I had already called 911. I had her moving the car, getting the insurance cards. I had rides for the kids at camp the next day. I must have been in shock. And by the time the ambulance got here, I go, this is the best thing. Get me some medicine. Let's head to Menorah. Christine Ricci's husband was on call. So I had figured that out and went over there and doing well now. About 12 weeks recovery now.
Yeah, there's really no way to integrate Bank of Blue Valley and Burns and McDonnell into that or the solutions they provide, but they provide many to Kansas City and throughout the country. And I'm so glad you're doing well. And the people watching the show that should be tuning in and telling us who they are and where they're from have also been thinking about where or how they can drop off gifts. So I figured I'd drop off a bunch of health food because you're going to be getting a bunch of pizza and donuts. So how has that journey been going?
I've never had, so we moved this house March 2021. I've never had more friends in my house than these past 2 weeks. It's weird. It's like when you get hurt, that's when you realize how many people are there for you. And some people aren't. And you realize that too, right? You say, maybe you and I have these conversations all the time of who you put your energy into, right? And so I've been very blessed to have a lot of people show up. My kids think this is the best thing ever because we've gotten dinner made for us every night. And so, for them, this is the best thing that could happen.
Are they saying you and Janae aren't good cooks?
No, we do, but we make the same 5 things, right?
Yeah,
because they're teenagers
so
and they think about everything. But this is a lot of people are bringing eat out food and stuff. And so my kids are loving it.
Yeah, I feel bad for our guests because we're going to be asking them some real in-depth questions. We've done well over 100 shows, but coincidentally, we've never had this format. And
we've
so I
never
think
had
it's going to be visually appealing.
Okay, first I want to ask people, and I'm looking at something on LinkedIn because somebody has their privacy settings on, and they're saying, "You the man, Scott." And now I got to say who thinks that you're the man. If you have your privacy settings on, this is how it comes up. And so don't have your privacy settings on. Otherwise, we don't know who you are. But this is Nick Musselman. Nick, go fix your privacy settings. Janae, hello, watching from LinkedIn in Russell, Kansas, Central Kansas. Hi, Janae. How are you, girl? Let us know who you are, where you're watching from, what platform, and start networking over here. We always hear of a ton of business happening over in these comments. All right, we've talked for 5 minutes and 11 seconds. I think people are sick of us. How about you?
Yeah, I just am excited for the visual appeal of what the show's going to look like here.
I'm super excited too. I will tell you that we do want to thank Bank of Blue Valley and Burns & McDonnell. Burns & McDonnell has like over 2,000 jobs available. Bank of Blue Valley is doing some awesome things. If you are looking for any sort of loan right now, they've got some really good.
Yeah, quick plug for Bank of Blue Valley. They've been in a lot of deals and have been lending a lot. So as supply chain is catching up or not catching up, business owners are in this flux. They have these projects that need to get done, and they're debating, do they do it or do they not? And having a partner like Bank of Blue Valley to be there and extend that line of credit or to help them on that next project and be patient with them is really kind of helping keeping this economic growth. So it's kind of like when they say there's maybe a soft landing for these 2 negative quarters of GDP to eventually a positive quarter, it's because of folks like Bank of Blue Valley.
Look, Janae is excited to hear. All right, here we go. Let me get back over here. Best music of the entire internet right here. All right, we're going to go ladies first. Our first guest today is Eileen. Hello, guys.
I love the music personally.
Oh, see, then it just stops. I'm still working on my DJ skills of fading out. How are you all? We're so excited you are here. So this is our first time out of however hundreds and many of shows we've done. We know we've had over 450 guests. We've had to have done 150 shows, something like that we've ever had 2 guests, right?
We're
we've
excited.
had 3 guests. We've had 4 guests. We've never had 2 guests. So
Special day.
It is, things sometimes just work out the way
they're. Does it not look good?
It does.
Looks great.
It looks really great. But I do notice, just let me put the shout out, that our sponsors, Bank of Blue Valley and Burns & McDonnell's logo does not work with this. So I'm going to have to make a new setup for when we have this many people on there to make sure we set their logo. So I'll pull it back up at the end. All right, here we go. We're going to jump right into it. Eileen, you're first. Who are you? What do you do? And how do you get to Kansas City?
My name's Eileen Weir. I have just concluded my 2nd term as mayor of the city of Independence. So I was mayor for 8 years. I was on the city council for 2 years prior to that. So I spent the last 10 years serving on the Independence City Council. When I was a council member, I also did consulting. I had a public relations communications consulting firm. But when I became mayor, I wasn't able to continue to do that. My full-time attention and job was being mayor of the city of Independence. So now I'm, really using all that experience, all the connections that I made, all the wonderful projects that I was involved with, both in Independence and around the metropolitan area, just to kind of see, where I want to kind of put my focus next. I'm continuing to work on some special projects that I helped get initiated in the city of Independence and around the region, and just continuing to kind of help those move forward. But certainly, looking for opportunities about how I can use my skills and both as a publicist and my government experience for something that I think really would have a big positive impact on the region. So the way I got to Kansas City in 1992, I moved here and I worked for the Kansas City Chiefs in their public relations department. So it was kind of a long story. I grew up in upstate New York and I went to college at Lemoyne College in Syracuse, Jesuit school in Syracuse, New York. And then after college, I was working in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and then I went to graduate school. And through a connection that I met in Gettysburg, I was offered a job here in Kansas City working for the Chiefs. So I dropped out of school, packed one bag, and came to Kansas City. And here I am.
Wow. Well, I want to go on the business side, but I mean, the amount of history you've had to obtain by being there of independence for the audience that we have a lot of Midwesterners and Kansas City focus is the historical value that independence brings. So, what are some fun facts, maybe interesting facts that you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, Independence is definitely a very historic city, best known probably for being the birthplace of Bess Truman and then the hometown of Harry Truman, who wasn't born in Independence, but always considered Independence to be his hometown. And, just in the last few days, the passing of David McCullough, who wrote the Pulitzer Prize-winning biography on Harry Truman. And it was truly McCullough's book that really brought attention to independence. I mean, people knew who Harry Truman was. Certainly people in Independence or maybe a Kansas City area were familiar with the Truman story. But it was really that book that just made Harry Truman famous. I mean, it really, really did. And has had, just the impact of that biography cannot be undersold as how much of an impact that had on our community and people wanting to come to Independence and learn about Harry Truman. Independence is also the jumping off point for the Pioneer Trails. So all of you who grew up loving Little House on the Prairie, like I did, that's kind of that pioneer spirit is certainly here in Independence. And we are the home of the National Frontiers Trails Museum, which is the only Frontier Trails museum in the nation or the only museum in the nation that's dedicated to the pioneer trails of Oregon, California, Santa Fe, but also the Mormon Trail and other pioneer trails that started here in Independence. So that's really our history. And I think it really embodies sort of the people of Independence and our attitude here as being very courageous, very forward thinking, risk takers, willing to pursue things that are risky and scary and unknown, but that have a really big impact. I mean, personally, I live at 3600 Blue Ridge Boulevard. Everybody knows where I live, so I don't mind telling people. The house we live in was built by my husband's grandparents. They developed the Blue Ridge Mall and the Blue Ridge Bank, which I think people are very familiar with and have really fond memories of the Blue Ridge Mall. They also owned the land where the Truman Sports Complex currently sits. So they made that land available to the county in the early 1970s to build Kauffman and Arrowhead Stadium.
Whoa, man, you nailed that history question. Go ahead, Erin.
No, I'm just, okay, a ton of Kansas City history, but I'm trying to think as a New York girl, and what was your thoughts at first about coming? Because a lot of people, when you grow up here, you say, I'm going to New York or I'm going to LA, I'm going to the big city, and you kind of did it opposite. What was that decision making like?
Well, I mean, I grew up in Binghamton, New York, which was a city of about 60,000 when I was a kid. It was the home of IBM. So that was a big employer. And what was then called SUNY Binghamton, now called Binghamton University. So, it was a small town. And my family had been there, is still there for many generations. So when I moved to Kansas City, I will tell you the thing that struck me the most was the beauty. I was just blown away by what a beautiful city it was and is. I lived on the plaza and I worked at the stadium, which I'm pointing because it's a mile from my house this way. And, the plaza then was a neighborhood. I mean, we had a grocery store, drugstore, a couple movie theaters, department stores. But, the layout of the city and the parks and the boulevards and the fountains, I really fell in love with how beautiful it was. And as a young single woman, I felt safe. It was affordable. All my friends who were going to New York or Boston or DC were cramming into, 1-bedroom apartments with 5 people, splitting the rent. And I just loved it. I didn't, as an Easterner, I had never been west of Buffalo, New York in my life. I mean, never. And when my husband and I got married in 1996, we had our wedding here in Kansas City, and my family was like, where are we going? I mean, covered wagons. And I just thought it was so beautiful. It was such an easy city to live in as a young single woman. And, I still feel that way. I mean, Kansas City, there's something special. I travel to a lot of cities and they're not very memorable. I mean, there might be one or two things that you're kind of like, that's cool. But when you're in Kansas City, you know it, you feel it. It just, I just love it.
I have one quick question here too, and then I promise Chuck at some point we'll let you talk.
Yeah.
Or Chuck.
I know.
It says, Eileen, how is the arts district taking off? I may be mistaken, but you all started an arts district, correct?
Yes, we did. That was way before I was mayor. Long before then, I was part of a group that here in Independence that created an arts district in Englewood. So Englewood is about a 4-block area on Winter Road. It used to be where the streetcar came from Kansas City to Independence to Englewood Station. And if you've been there, it's like this really quaint, charming little 4-block business district that's really kind of anchored by an old movie theater, which unfortunately is not operating, but is still there. And the marquee is there, the Englewood Theater. So I was just part of a citizens volunteer group that created this arts district zoning years and years and years ago. It is the only arts district in Kansas City, and I want people to understand that. I mean, we think of the Crossroads and other places as arts districts, but they do not have arts district zoning. So this is the only place in all of Kansas City area that has that zoning. And it really allows for artists to come and be able to do things in this district that they cannot do anyplace else in the Kansas City area without getting like a special permit or something to like create art in their home or sell art out of their home or whatever. So a few years ago, the city condemned or started condemnation on a medical office building that's within that district. We ultimately ended up selling it to a group called Englewood Arts, which is a nonprofit, and they are converting it into an arts center. They're in the midst of a large capital campaign. They've raised several $1 million to renovate this building and create this arts center. And, there's just been a lot of other really great activity around there. There's a beautiful restaurant, Vivalor, if you haven't been over there. It's just will blow your mind how beautiful it is with this gorgeous outdoor courtyard area and wonderful food and art and retail. There's lots of independent thriving businesses in Englewood. And so, we're continuing I'm still very active in that and continuing to raise money for the building and then, ultimately get that open. We hope, probably this fall and start having programming in there as well.
Oh, I can't wait to visit it.
Yeah.
That's exciting. All right, Chuck, who are you? Yeah. What do you do? And how do you get to Kansas City?
Yeah. So I'm Chuck Schneider. And so kind of my background is in software engineering and specifically in healthcare. So I came to Kansas City from Iowa State, originally from Nebraska. So definitely a Midwestern person. And started at Cerner. So January 8th of 1996, I started at Cerner. It was a 1,000-person company. And I stayed there for 26 years and left last year.
For context, you were one of the first 20 developers, correct?
Yeah, I was one of the first 20 architects that created the electronic medical record at Cerner. That's correct. Also have 11 patents, all healthcare, IT in my name. And so it was great. It was a total paper industry, healthcare. So some of the older audience, or maybe you've seen on movies where literally the nurses and physicians would walk around with big binders or clipboards. And actually the nurses and physicians spent a lot of time looking for the clipboard because it was wherever the last person set it down. And that may be down on a different floor. It may be, at the nurse's station, wherever. So really digitizing an entire industry was pretty awesome experience. Did a lot of cool stuff there. And last year left there and started Redpoint Summit. So that is a healthcare IT company. So going with what I know, and our focus there is to really make sure we work on clinician burnout. So I'm sure you've seen a lot of that in the headlines. And even before COVID, it was a big deal of physicians, nurses are very burned out, and a lot of the frustration of keyboard time. So usually a physician in a normal shift will spend 2 hours behind the keyboard for every 1 hour of patient face time. So obviously that adds a lot of friction, and there's a lot of opportunity there to make that better.
So simplistically, how does your company what are the deals that you seek to make money for your company? Because they get the problem you're solving.
Yeah, so our customers are health systems, and any health system that's using either an Epic or Cerner or EMR, those are the two big vendor names in the space. And then what we do is through data analytics, we pull down the users' patterns within the electronic medical records. So ordering patterns, documentation patterns, how they go and navigate through the chart. And then we identify for each individual user what those patterns are, and then we build that customization back into the electronic medical record. So physicians on average only spend 1 hour of training for electronic medical record. And to put that in, to context of, we all use big, complicated software, whatever that is. And if you have zero training, you stare at this really complex screen and you know that it does a lot, but you're not quite sure how. Well, now in a healthcare setting, you're making decisions by the second. You don't quite know how to use the software, and it gets very frustrating. So by us to be able to really pull in all that data and then analyze and do pattern matching of these users, and then we can go use robotic process automation and then customize it for each user. So we call it EMR personalization at scale.
So when you were at Cerner, a lot of people think of software development as a lot of people getting together like a pickup basketball game, but you got to work with a lot of great entrepreneurs for a really long period of time. So what advice do you have for teams? Like, how do you build great teams, or what's special about a great team? Because the team that you led and helped build with other leaders, brought something really cool to Kansas City that turned into 20,000 employees.
Yeah, there's quite a few answers to that. So one mantra we had early on was from a software architecture perspective was don't make a 20-year mistake, which basically means don't make a irreversible design decision. So make sure you understand whatever space you're working in enough. And you're going to make mistakes, but don't make the one mistake that you can't reverse 3 years from now once you learn a little bit more. So, but then to balance that out is you don't want to stop and just ponder and be, analysis paralysis of you've got to make decisions and learn as you go. And a lot of that is through communication. So it's definitely the better together. You've got all kinds of specialties. And really in any team setting, you've got the folks who know the customers, you may have the technical people, you have the sales or marketing people, and it's really communicating across all those groups and coming up with, okay, what is the best thing to get to the business result that we need?
This is so fascinating to me. Little history. My partner is in the clinical burnout. So she was a cardio tech in the cath lab, working 80, 90 hours a week. We have teenagers missing everything. And she just went over to KU, and she has a business degree. So she went over to their finance side. And so her job now, I couldn't tell you her 15-word title, but essentially it's to check charges, right? Because a bunch of stuff gets stuffed in there, and it's to go back through and check them. And this is really interesting because one part of me is sitting here because I'm a tech girl going, this is fascinating. And I love AI, and you're probably way better at AI than me, but it's something I really stay on top of. But then I'm also like, Well, then what's she going to be doing in a couple of years? This takes off. Yours takes off. Because I think that this is what hospitals need. Can you hear me, Chuck? Can you not hear me, Chuck? Chuck says in a private chat, he lost connection.
Lost connection.
Oh, okay. Chuck, jump out and get back in. Jump out and get back in. Not sure what happened.
You know, there's one gentleman that probably can coach us on
Yes.
how to do it. It's Chuck. The interesting, there's a company called NavMD that a friend of ours, Aaron and I know, named Glenn Fisher, and he had a technology that was set out to do something completely different than what he does today. But what the company does is, unfortunately, to no one's fault, or potentially other people's fault, is they misbill the patients when they come in, and they come back, but it's easy to catch the correction, but then they go back to the hospital and make them pay back the money.
Oh, I like it.
So
Chuck, can you hear us
it's really
now?
unique.
Yeah. Sorry, I bailed out there for a second.
That's okay. All I was saying is that, did you hear anything I said?
Yeah, your partner basically went to the finance, went out of basically more direct clinical practice and went to the charging. Yeah.
So this is fascinating. I think you're going to replace her job. So I'm going to come to you for a new job for her. But I think that this is, I mean, they've got at KU, you know, they're kind of the conglomerate. They've got tons of people actually doing this, which it sounds like your software can do fairly quickly.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, real estate is, healthcare is kind of like real estate. There's so many aspects of it. You know, you can be a frontline provider like a nurse or a physician, or you can be a radiologist, or you can work the billing or the finance. I mean, or the IT side like I have for most of my career. And it's kind of like, you know, same with real estate. You can be an agent, or you can be an investor, or, you know, you can be a remodeler. It's such a huge complex thing, and it's an imperfect industry, which makes it pretty exciting, I think.
Janae wants to know, do you work with critical access hospitals?
We're right now focused on the larger hospitals, but that is one area that we're looking at is definitely the critical access.
Well, you and Janae, she runs marketing for a hospital in Kansas somewhere, Russell, Kansas. So there you go. See, look at this awesome stuff that happens on this show.
Yep, ping me, would be happy to chat for sure.
Perfect. Okay, well, let's do this. Let's move on to our Burns and McDonnell question of the day. I'm going to run the question, and then Eileen, you jump into your answer. And you know what I think would be fun? Everyone on the audience, we got quite a few people watching. Put your answer in the comments too, because I think this is a really fascinating question. All right, here we go.
Hi, my name is Megan Stretz, and I'm an HR business partner here at Burns & McDonnell. I work with employees to help them reimagine the path to success in their careers. Can you tell me how you define and demonstrate the values in your organization?
Okay, me. So I'm going to talk about when I was mayor of the city of Independence. Just to, you know, it's only been a few months, so it's very
no big deal. Just mayor of Independence. You know.
Clear in the rearview mirror. One of the most important things that we did was create a strategic plan. And believe it or not, the city had never had a strategic plan that was published. It had metrics. I mean, all the things that a strategic plan is supposed to have that we actually measured ourselves against. So I have to tell you, I kind of came at it kicking and screaming a little bit, but I'm very glad that we ended up doing it. So we did a 5-year strategic plan. We accomplished nearly 100% of those goals, and then started a new 5-year strategic plan just last year. But attached to that was not just here's what needs to get done and here's how we're going to do it, but what are our values, and how is our staff supposed to, you know, conduct their business? Do we expect our volunteers, people who serve on boards and commissions, and our community to embrace these values? And it was a really big part of it, because when we started off on this strategic plan, we really were focused on I mean, here's the checklist. Here's everything that needs to get done. How are we going to do it? How are we going to stop our citizens from calling us all the time, complaining about these things, and have real, you know, answers for them? but we really spent a lot of time on developing those values. And in a sense, that was more unifying for our community than even just getting the tasks done, about really saying, who are we? And a companion to that, we also developed a new comprehensive development plan, which hadn't been done in 25 years. And, everybody who's familiar with the comp plan, you go immediately to the maps and pull those out and say, where's the residential go? Where's the commercial go? Where's the industrial go? How are we going to use the land? But the comp plan really tells your story about your community. And I've already, talked a lot about our history and sort of our character in independence. But it was really having those documents that we really committed to, and not just up on the third floor of City Hall where the executives and the mayor and council live, but really engaging our Chamber of Commerce, our Economic Development Corporation, our school districts, to really define, the values of the community and how we're going to carry those forward. So, it was just sort of this, in the public relations world, we used to call it the fog. I mean, you just have to kind of envelop people in these ideas and just kind of keep, saying it and saying it and saying it. So it sort of just becomes part of people's DNA. And we really emphasized in those two initiatives, the values of the community, almost more so than even just knocking off the things that had to get done.
I like that. I have a quick question. Do you think you'll ever be in politics in any other role? Is that kind of a goal, or?
My answer to that is don't take my name off the list. My political career has been one of opportunity, and I think that that's most politicians. That's the case. I always had an interest in being involved in my community. I mean, I had an interest in serving my community, and I've done it in many different ways. And elected office is just one of those. But I love policy. I love strategic planning. I love, pulling together the resources and solving the problems and saying, how can we make this work? How do we build partnerships? How do we leverage resources? So I like it. And I think I was pretty good at it. So I certainly would be open to opportunities, but I don't really have something targeted exactly that I'm working towards. But, I certainly would be open to opportunities if the right office came available at the right time and I felt that I would be effective in that office.
That's pretty, that's a great answer. It's pretty strong of you too. Being in office during COVID, I would think would wear most people down. So that just makes me think you're kind of a badass. So Chuck, would you like me to play the video again, or do you remember the question?
I got it. I think it's how do you define and demonstrate values in your organization. So just to build on Eileen's, I think step one that she said, and I definitely agree with it, is that you got to have a written plan. And so for us, as we created our company, we wanted to make sure what are our values, and so we came up with 7 of them. And it's passionate, systemize, communicate, results driven, innovate, bold, and earn trust. And so then once we came up with all those, then it was really, well, what does it mean to be bold? Because you can define that. Everyone has a different definition. So we went through and really defined examples of that. So just like one example of what we mean by being bold is to present wild ideas. Like, we want wild ideas. We don't want to be conservative. Or earn trust is a very hard one that means something different for a lot of people. It's more than just tell the truth. We came up with become vulnerable. So you earn trust when you're vulnerable. Admit when you make a mistake. And so then once we went and defined those different examples, we make sure we go and every quarter review these. And one, do we still think these are the right set of values? And we give ourselves a grade of how are we doing in each one of these? Have we been innovative? And then if so, what examples do we have of being innovative this quarter? So we don't want it just to be a onboarding HR manual that no one reads except on their first day. And so we really try to embrace it on a regular basis.
Right. I like that. How long has your company been around?
We started into last year, so not very long. So we're
okay. So how much have you found yourself tweaking those values? Are you doing that yet?
So far we've maintained those same 7 values, but the examples, as we came across different situations, we're like, oh, hey, maybe we need to add, become vulnerable, or, communicate clearly, make sure all stakeholders who this affects, we communicate clearly to, not just ourselves or just the client. And so we've really expanded the examples is where we've come up with more things.
You made me think of that because you brought up the handbook, and I read somewhere during COVID that most companies write up the handbook and then never look at it again, right? And so I went and revisited that, and it was so funny. Our first handbook, we change it out now every year. We go back and revisit it every year since 2020.
Good for you, Erin.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we copy and pasted it, a lot of it from somewhere, but like we offered Easter as a holiday. I was like, what? Why did no one ever go, this is a joke, right? Like it was kind of funny, but I've now always paid attention to how many people do that. So so you're still, you said a year and a half, or you're in the first year? Sorry.
We started in November of 2021. So this is like month 8, month 9 for us.
Nice.
So far we had our seed round of investment secured through University of Nebraska Medical Center. They're our first clients. We're very close to going live with our first product, which we're pretty excited about. And we're really doing product validation of our second and third products now. And so we're doing interviews, across different hospital organizations of, here's some ideas. Are they good ideas? Are they bad ideas? Would this match your priorities? We don't want to go build something that then we realize nobody wants. So that's really kind of one of the lines we're on now, is just making sure we're doing product validation for products number 2 and 3.
What is your favorite, besides healthcare, what's your favorite thing you've seen done with AI so far?
Well, I'm going to change the question a little bit. And what I find is interesting is all the mundane things that we're engaged with. It's really kind of the computation of data and kind of quantifying things. So for example, like I get a monthly report on my washer machine on the number of cycles and the different cycles. You get a report on your fitness watch. I use Evernote. I get, number of notes I've modified or created. So like everything is being quantified. And so I find that interesting. Now, where it's a business opportunity is now, how's that of value to anybody? Some of this I just find interesting, being kind of a data nerd of, man, you can compute and create a stat for anything. Now, how do you go and make that something useful? That's kind of the business that we're in, is pulling in all that data and then actually solving a problem.
Right.
Go ahead, Erin.
No, I was just going to ask. I'm getting geeky in my AI stuff. I'll stop after this question, I promise. Do you follow Kathy Hackle at all?
I do not.
Okay, you need to follow her. She's kind of the queen of both the VR and the AI space. She actually rang the first virtual reality bell at the same time. She got to ring the real bell, and while her virtual world was ringing the virtual reality bell. But she's kind of the queen of this space, so I follow her. So she'd be a good follow for you. And honestly, anybody watching on LinkedIn, Kathy with a C, Kathy Hackle, she's one of my favorite. I mean, it's insane if you don't understand this AI world, the things that are happening. So you need to go look at that.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and really where I think AI and machine learning and all that is going is right now you really need data scientists, and it's still kind of this weird magical thing people don't really understand. but it's getting easier and easier to consume to where now if you're a software engineer, it's close to where you can then go and leverage some of that. And then I think, the next step will be, if you're a business analyst, how do you go pull in different little widgets to then, do some of this computation? So it'll get easier and easier to consume. And then it'll be amazing what people go and apply it to. I mean, that's the exciting part, is it's still a very young tool to use.
Like Scott's like, okay, guys, enough of this.
No, not at all. I love it. I was going to plug Lily and James here. I was going to say that, Chuck, did you work with Mike Zimmerman?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know Mike.
So the backdrop of the Burns and Mac question was Mike Zimmerman's business behind there, Artisan, which is now Viaggio. And but it's funny how that some of the greatest entrepreneurs spun out of that developer community that you're a part of. So it'd always be cool to have the Business Journal who watches the shows. They're really super nice to Aaron and I. That's always one thing. That, and then Garmin has its family tree of their finance community that's gone on to be CFOs at a lot of great companies. I think it's just worth noting that Eileen and you are a part of a lot of things that touch the greater good of Kansas City. And so, Aaron, just wanted to segue to plug one of your clients that have hired you in the past.
Yeah, no, I think that there's always like groups where people get into, and then it's who you put yourself together, right? So I always say the group of the perceptive sales guys all went and turned into major business people. The first 20 developers at Cerner is one of the groups I always talk about. And then it sounds like you said with Garmin. Okay, I have a fun question for Eileen. Eileen.
Yeah.
What is a secret thing in independence that people should know about that maybe they don't know about independence? Like, what's something cool that's out there that maybe those of us that, live on the other side of the state line don't know about, that's out there that we should come see?
Oh my gosh. Well, I talked about Englewood. I think that's, kind of becoming not so much of a secret, but it's definitely something that is very interesting and coming along. I think everybody knows, when you think of independence, you think of the Independence Square. I mean, I think that's what comes to a lot of people's minds is the, square built around the Jackson County courthouse, which, was the original center of town. But there's just been a ton of public art that's been happening the last 2 years. And that's really worth coming over to see. I mean, I went gaga for Parade of Hearts. I mean, I was like, I didn't bicycle around and see 156 hearts like that one guy did. But I was like, that was like the coolest thing. And Independence, definitely, got to participate in a pretty large way in that. But our city's just really fired up about arts right now and public art. We've installed, several murals, several new sculptures. There's some more planned on the way. And, we have incredible architecture that I think is, our form of art in so many ways is, and I would say that's the same for Kansas City. I mean, when we're talking about art attraction in Kansas City area, don't overlook the architecture, which is pretty incredible. And, you're a nerd for AI, Aaron. I mean, I'm a nerd for city planning. My dad was, his career was in downtown redevelopment, and we never went to Disney World or Mexico to the beach. We always went to cities growing up on vacation to look at them and study the, traffic patterns and, that kind of goofy things. So, I think like the public design is really fascinating, interesting. And, we're doing a lot to enhance that with public art just for people. It's free. Just come, bring your family, get an ice cream cone and walk around and check out the art and architecture.
I want to give a shout out to, it's an actual client. I'll just be real transparent. but they've done one of the coolest things. And Eileen, I don't know if you've had a chance to meet them, but their name is Baldwin and Vernon. They're an attorney firm out there, and they're actually on the square. And they took an old, not quite KKK church, but it was a KKK church, and they revamped it and made it into a civil rights attorney firm.
Yes.
And then they bought one of the hearts.
Yes.
Put it out there about equality. And it's right there on the corner of the square. And it's one, I don't know why nobody's done a story on it yet.
I don't know. I went to a fundraiser there recently, and I won't say who, but
they had a political fundraiser.
I pulled up and the heart was there, and I was like, oh my God, there's one of them. I was so excited.
It's one of the coolest firms, law firms, but it's an independence, and they kind of stick over to that side. But it's an old church that they made into a civil rights law firm. And it's kind of the way they do it. Like
from the
basement is a mock trial room people can rent. It's really, really cool. So, all right, Chuck, I got a question for you.
Sure.
Had you not ended up in Cerner, kind of, because you got kind of one of those golden jobs, right? You end up, everybody at some point works at a startup, and very few startups turn into Cerner, right? Had you not ended up at Cerner, what do you think your career would look like today?
That's pretty interesting. I mean, I graduated from college in the 90s, so this was right before the .com. This was the heyday of the .com, and so probably I would have wound up going to work for my dad, who owned an engineering company, and I worked there for a summer doing factory automation. So one of my claims to fame is I wrote the software that makes frosted mini wheats. So for Kellogg's, and it was so keep in mind this was in the 90s, and it was touchscreen interface out on the factory, which was pretty leading edge. So I probably would have gone all in on factory automation. Now, you see, all kinds of factory automation, the way cars are made and things like that. But we were making frosting and cooking biscuits for breakfast cereal back then. So.
Okay, so have you ever watched the movie Joy?
Joy, no.
Okay, you guys all have to watch the movie Joy. I watched it again with my kids this weekend, but it's a true story. And this woman ended up having hundreds of patents, but she originally made the mop that would squeeze itself. That was her first patent. And so I got to teach my kids about patents. But what was your first patent that you did? Because you said you have 11, right? What was your first patent, and which patent are you the most proud of?
Let's see. Probably the one. I can't remember. I don't remember the order of them. So one that is, I think, kind of the coolest, and it gets a little in depth. So I'm just going to try to make it simple. But it's around the medication schedule. So just think of this of when you take a prescription, it's twice a day. So that's called BID, twice a day. And so at a hospital, those are usually have routine times. So 8 a.m., 8 p.m. Let's just say. And then if the physician needs to make a change and say make it 3 times a day, then that falls onto a different schedule. So maybe that's 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. and then midnight or something like that. And the weird thing is, so if they make that change at 8:30 in the morning, you just had your 8 a.m. dose. And if you change it to 3 times a day, and the 3 times is scheduled to be 9 a.m., you don't want to take 2 doses, one at 8 and one at 9. And so we designed a way, one, to make that obvious to the users so you don't overdose the patient, and 2, learning to calculate what is a dose that is too close to the last one. And some of the times we're able to make that calculation, and some of the times we need to empower the user back for them to go make that decision. So I know that's way down into the weeds, but it's really around medication schedules and ensuring patients are dosed correctly.
Saving lives is always a good thing, I feel.
Yeah.
All right, Scott, I keep asking questions. Why don't you ask each person one more question, and then I'll let you do your stupid thing you like to do.
Oh, man, don't be so hard on the icebreakers. So, Eileen, obviously there's a lot of history with independence, but you were talking about projects that you're working on ongoing.
Yeah.
Are any of those, we talked about the past episodes of the battery plant in DeSoto, but what are some projects with Independence being such a super highway of so many different things? Were any of those projects that the audience would get really excited about, or you're excited about?
Big
If
one.
you can share.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Huge one that was just approved, in the last few months was North Point doing a massive industrial development in Independence, $1 billion development. And then, we got trumped by $4 billion in DeSoto. But we were kind of like the headline there for a while. And this is something, and I am not exaggerating when I say the city has been working on for 50 years to develop the Little Blue Valley. We have a cute little thing in our newspaper every Saturday that pulls headlines from 50 years ago and 100 years ago. And 50 years ago, they were talking about how are we going to develop industrial in the Little Blue Valley. And that project has been approved. And, they're moving forward to get buildings up and find tenants. And it's a huge, huge, huge game changer for Independence, Kansas City, Eastern Jackson County, to bring that industry here after so many years of putting all the pieces together to attract that and make that happen. So that's, a huge one that will give our kids, reasons to stay in Independence and be able to have great careers here and build a home, buy a home, raise their families here, and kind of, help to attract those young professionals to our community as well. So that's a giant one that has a really, really big impact. I was going to say, when you asked me earlier, a secret in Independence, but I don't like telling people this secret because I don't want people to know about it, because then it infringes on my ability to have first access to Cargo Largo, which is the greatest place to go, period, and find things. And they also are.
Elaborate. What is Cargo Largo?
Well,
I do.
Oh, okay.
It used to be called Recovery Sales Outlet or something like that, RSO. So basically what it is overstock items or things that were not able to be delivered by UPS, Amazon, whomever. They go to a big, huge warehouse in North Kansas City, and then they have two ways to sell that merchandise. One is at Cargo Largo, which is at 35th and Nolan Road. And the other is through their pallet sales, which they have once a week up at their facility on Front Street. And it is fabulous. It is like fabulous. You have to go there and just see what they have. If you need school supplies, go to Cargo Largo. That's all I'm saying. You need shoes for the kids, go to Cargo Largo. But they're bringing their whole facility to Independence at their site at 35th and Nolan Road, their warehouse, their logistics, their operations, and brand new retail stores. So those are two gigantic economic development projects that are, just really newly approved and moving forward.
Nice. All right, one more question for Chuck. We got
Chuck,
5 minutes left.
If you had to put yourself into a bucket, we can do it too, but if you had to put yourself in a bucket, do you like to build stuff or do you like to run it? So entrepreneurs, I find, have two different skill sets. Either really like to build it and then have someone else run it, or they build it and they run it. So what do you like to do?
Oh, that's a tough one. I always hate the A and B. I like the innovative process and coming up with the things to go build. If I had to change, I would probably say the build side of it. But I do really enjoy the systemizing things and the efficiency once things are up and running. Because that's a problem I really see it as you're building the system to run it on. So it's, first you build the product and then you build the system around it to keep it running. So, if I had to pick build, I'd pick build, but otherwise I'd kind of frame it as you're building both.
Yeah, and then I'll ask one quick question. The Bank of Blue Valley helped finance a pool that Aaron will be getting into in this hot weather soon. Burns McDonnell, they designed nuclear power plants. They didn't design the concrete. But Eileen, if you had to be in a body of water, what body of water would you enjoy visiting? And would you have a drink in your hand? And what would that be?
I'm not much for the water. I guess I would take a swimming pool. And yes, I would definitely love to be floating around in the pool with a cocktail. That sounds absolutely great.
Sounds really good.
All right, Chuck, what about yourself? Is there a body of water that you really enjoy visiting? And what kind of drink would you be having?
Yeah, I would say anywhere tropical, anywhere warm. I'll pick Hawaii. That's pretty nice. And yeah, Mai Tai is always a good day when you have one of those.
Oh, I haven't had a Mai Tai in a while. I haven't had a drink in a while, and I don't think I'm allowed to yet. Look who showed up, Miss Lori Wilkerson from Bank of Blue Valley. This is actually Lori's who I worked with for my pool, actually. So if you guys need a pool, hit up Lori. Awesome. Well, listen, I think that you guys nailed it for our first 2-person show. You guys really killed it.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you to Bank of Blue Valley. Thank you to Burns and McDonnell. Scott, thanks for holding down the fort while I've been out a little bit. You've been doing wonderful. I was afraid I was going to get replaced. So you've been doing great. If you're looking for a new gig, check out Burns and McDonnell. If you have any questions, you can hit up me and Scott. We can get you the right people. If you're looking for a new pool and a loan or a business loan or any of the above, check out Bank of Blue Valley. Thank you guys so much. You guys stick on for a second because I want to tell you something when we get off of here. And we'll see you same time, same place next week. All right. Bye, guys. See ya.
Thank you.